Tales from the Odyssey. Chapter 7. The Land of the Dead. When the sun had gone down and darkness had fallen, Odysseus and his men arrived at the edge of the sea. They sailed through a gray mist into the deep waters of Oceanus, the river that flows around the world. Then they sailed across Oceanus and finally came to the land of the dead. The Greeks moored their vessel on a dark riverbank shrouded in fog. As they stared into the mist, the men shook with terror, afraid to venture into the haunted realm. Odysseus himself trembled at the thought of what lay ahead, but with firm resolve he stepped ashore and ordered his men to follow him with 2 sheep from Circe's island. Odysseus and his men traveled on foot through a grove of poplars and willows. They stopped when they came to the place where 2 rivers met, the river of flame and the river of groans. There, in a place never touched by the rays of the sun, Odysseus dug a deep trench. He poured in the mixture of honey, milk, wine, and white barley meal. He offered prayers for the spirits of the dead. Then he ordered his men to slay the 2 sheep as a sacrifice to the gods. As soon as Odysseus poured the blood of the sacrificed animals into the trench, ghostly beings appeared out of the mist. The spirits of old men and women, the spirits of warriors still wearing their armor, the spirits of young women who had mourned for their lost men and died of broken hearts. Thousands of ghosts began moving slowly toward the Greeks. Drawn to the scent of the blood, they made strange wailing noises. Odysseus's men shook and trembled. Odysseus himself turned pale with fear. But he drew his sword to keep the spirits away until the ghost of Tiresias, the blind prophet, appeared. While Odysseus fiercely guarded the trench, his gaze came to rest on one of the spirits floating through the mist. With shock and horror, he recognized someone he loved very dearly. Moving toward him was the ghost of his own mother. Chapter 8. Like a shadow or a dream. Odysseus wept. He had not seen his mother for more than 10 years, not since he had left Ithaca. He knew now that one of the worst fears had been realized. While he had been away, his beloved mother had died. He called her name, but the spirit of his mother did not speak to him. She did not seem to even recognize him. She seemed only to yearn for a taste of the sheep's blood in the trench. In spite of his great sorrow, Odysseus held up his sword and would not let his mother's ghost come closer. He kept guarding the trench, waiting for the spirit of Tiresias to appear. At last a frail figure drifted out of the mist. Carrying a golden scepter in his hand, the ghost of an old man moved through the swirling gray air toward the animal blood. Odysseus lowered his sword and allowed the spirit of Tiresias to drink from the trench. Once the ghost had had his fill of the sheep's blood, he rose and turned to Odysseus. In a clear, cold voice, he said, "Odysseus, you have come to ask me about your journey home. The gods are making your voyage very difficult. They will not allow you to escape the anger of Poseidon for blinding his son, the Cyclops." Odysseus felt a wave of despair. The curse of the Cyclops seemed too terrible for him to endure. "Do not lose hope," the ghost said. "You may still return to Ithaca, but you must heed my warning. On your way home, you will pass the island of the sun god. On this island, there are many beautiful sheep and cattle. Do not let your men touch even one of these creatures. They are much adored by the sun. Any man who tries to slay them will meet his doom." Odysseus nodded. "Tell your men to leave these herds untouched and think only of returning home," the ghost said. "If they do not obey this command, they will die, and your ship will be destroyed. You alone might escape, but if you do, you will be a broken man, and you will find great trouble in your house." Odysseus was grateful for the wise man's warnings. He resolved to keep his men from touching the cattle and sheep of the sun god. Many years from now, Death shall come to you from the sea, the ghost of the soothsayer said finally. Your life shall leave you when you are old and have found peace of mind. Odysseus nodded. If this is the will of the gods, so be it, he said. As Tiresias started to move away, Odysseus called after him, Wait, please, before you leave. The ghost turned back. Can you tell me why my mother's spirit does not speak to me when I call her name? Odysseus asked. Your mother's ghost can speak only if you allow her to taste the blood in the trench, answered the ghost of Tiresias. Until then, she has not life enough to speak. The spirit of the wise prophet turned away, and Odysseus watched him fade back into the mist. Odysseus then bid his mother's ghost to come forward and taste the blood from the trench. Once she had tasted the sheep's blood, the spirit of Odysseus's mother seemed to gain strength. When she looked again at her son, she cried out in surprise. My beloved, she said, you are not a spirit. Why are you here? Odysseus gently explained to his mother the reason for his journey to the land of the dead. Then he asked her many questions. How are Penelope and Telemachus? Did Penelope bury my memory and marry another? How is my father? Is he still alive? The ghost looked at her son sadly. Your family has been broken by sorrow, she said. Your wife still waits for you, but she spends her days and nights weeping. Your son is strong and brave. Though he is young, he guards your home, your fields, and your livestock. He also mourns your absence, as does your father. Your father lives in the country and never goes near town. In winter, he wears only rags and sleeps on the floor. In summer, he sleeps in the vineyard. He weeps for you all the time. Odysseus was grieved to hear this news of his family. And you, mother? He asked. What sad fate has befallen you? Your absence weighed too greatly on my heart, she said. As I grew more and more certain you would never return home, I became too sad to live. Odysseus reached out to embrace his mother's ghost. 3 times he tried, but each time she slipped away from him as if she were made of air. Mother, he cried, why are you not there when I try to embrace you? My son, I am only a spirit, she said gently. Leave the land of the dead now. Find the light of day while you still live. To Odysseus's great sadness, the spirit of his mother then faded from his sight like a shadow or a dream. And we will stop there.